For more on this, I'm joined from Rome by journalist Alina Trabattoni. Alina, great to have you on the show. Thank you for joining me. First of all, what stood out from last night's Mass, and what does Leo's approach tell us about what kind of Pope he wants to be?
Well, Leigh-Ann, great to be speaking to you about this because it's really, really interesting. I have to say that it was Pope Leo's first Christmas Mass, and it all stood out, from the rain to the crowds, to the atmosphere in the Basilica, to his calls for peace and for unity across the world. And yesterday, incredibly, when thousands of people could not fit into the Basilica for Christmas Eve, for the traditional midnight Mass, and the weather was absolutely stormy and wet and cold, he got up and went outside before the Mass, and he was walking around with an umbrella and greeting the pilgrims in Italian and English, apologizing that St. Peter's wasn't big enough to hold all the crowds that were present, telling them to take courage. He stood there in the rain with them, and people on the ground told me that's a very, very powerful image that they have, a memory they will be carrying with them for the rest of their life, for a very long time. And today, of course, he restored something, as you said, he restored something that had not been seen for 30 years in the Catholic Church, a full Christmas Day Mass, starting at around 10 a.m. this morning. The Basilica packed again, St. Peter's Basilica packed again. A Pope saying that liturgy physically in the heart of the city, in the heart of the Vatican city, not just on screens. That's something we have not seen for a very long time across Italy, across the Vatican, across the world for Catholic believers. And this choice of presence over distance shapes his message, and everyone feels shapes things that will come after. At least that's according to Vatican experts I've been speaking to. And in his homily, in the Urbi et Orbi address, Pope Leo didn't hide behind the doctrine. He named suffering directly, and he talked about Gaza, about the Ukraine, Sudan, Yemen, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Israel. Everything was in his mind, on his mind, as he was, giving the homily. And he drew people verbally into the tents at Gaza. Tents, he said, were exposed to rain, wind and cold, echoing the pilgrims that had stood with the night before in St. Peter's Square in the cold and the rain and the wind. And he talked about young people forced to take up arms, and the difficulty they were facing in doing this. But what cut deepest, and I'm sorry, it was such a powerful moment that, I could talk a lot about it, but I will wind up quickly. But what cut deepest was this, his comment on, human flesh asking for care. Mm-hmm. He went beyond theory, and he went very much on the ground with the people, and, asking those present to be grateful, to be helpful, and to take action in terms of calling for ceasefires, peace, and so forth.
Alina, like you just said to me, this was a different Mass today. Today's full Christmas Mass we haven't seen in a really long time, of course. But, I've just been listening to you speaking to me, and I was watching the Pope deliver his message. And, of course, he spoke about Ukraine. He spoke about the plight in Gaza. Do you think he is becoming a really political Pope?
Well, in a sense, yes, but his action is slightly different from his predecessors in that he's not calling on the governments to take action. In the sense, his message goes to the governments as well, but he's very much leveraging Catholic believers' sense of responsibility. So he's really positioning himself to be a moral force in the current geopolitical situation, but without delving and getting completely immersed in day-by-day politics. And this came across in many ways. He spoke about Yemen, Mali, Burkina Faso, and he equally pointed out that. Or the message that was transmitted and also that has been analyzed by Vatican experts is that he's calling on activists and Catholic believers to take action and to contribute towards resolving some of these problems, to calling for ceasefires, to contributing to working towards, people putting down their arms, to taking in immigrants. He even called on, people living in prison that are living in inhumane conditions to be helped and supported, the unemployed as well. He framed peace as something that begins when people change. So when Catholic believers change, not when governments take action top down. It's a very grassroots message that he was coming across with. And he's positioning Catholics and the Catholic Church, of course, as a moral force that really can't be ignored because just due to the sheer volume of Catholic believers across the world. And the real impact of his message, it's going to be, according to many of the experts I've spoken to, on Catholic activists, on workers, on diplomats, politicians as well, who are Catholic. We have a lot of high-profile politicians who are Catholic across the world, and now they have a pope giving them moral permission to resist, to question, to act. And, going back to the reign of yesterday, it's now part of the message. A pope in the weather with pilgrims locked out versus a pope in the Basilica, detached from the masses and the pilgrims. And, his message calling for justice for the homeless, dispossessed, and those that are suffering today was very, very strong.
And Alina, while you've been talking to me and while you've been on screen, we can see those beautiful pictures of the Pope inside the Basilica. And it's always a really emotional time for the whole Catholic community, of course, the 25th of December. But you are in Italy yourself, you're close to the Vatican. What's the broader significance of Leo's first Christmases for audiences like me? I'm a Catholic and I'm beyond the Vatican, of course.
Well, I think really the real message here is that his style is going to be different. It's going to follow in the wake of his predecessors, because obviously the objective is always the same, but his style is definitely different. Different from Pope Francis. Pope Leo quoted him actually during the Christmas celebrations. Pope Francis was expansive, almost pastoral in trying to embrace the whole world's pain at the same time. And different from Pope Benedict, he was an intellectual, theological, speaking to the mind. Pope Leo is something else. He's lyrical, but he's very direct. He uses poetry. He cited poetry during the Christmas celebrations, and then he cuts straight to the bone. He structurally, his approach is much, much tighter. What we can say is that, compared to Pope Francis, who was all embracing, who would spiral outwards and try and, reach out to everyone at the same time, touching on everything, Pope Leo moves in circles. His masses, his approaches move in circles, going deeper each time. They all end with the same theme, really. It all boils down to opening our hearts up to those in pain, and that this, for Catholic believers, transforms them into children of God. Here's what's most striking, and I think a lot of people will be taken away from these Christmas festivities, both analysts and experts, but also believers, pilgrims, and let's not forget, this year is Jubilee year in Italy. It's a 1 in a 25-year occurrence, and there's a huge inflow of pilgrims from all over the world. Leo restored the full Christmas Day Mass in St. Peter's, as we were saying earlier, for the first time in 30 years. And that's not really style, if you think about it. It's actually infrastructure. He's saying the Pope's physical presence, the Pope's body, should be in the Basilica, and that it matters, and it shouldn't just be his word on screens. It should be him physically celebrating Mass, and that's very different from his predecessor's approach to the papacy itself. And also, the rain yesterday was very, very symbolic, and that made it very clear. When he walked out to address those locked out of the Basilica, he wasn't performing charity. He was showing that a Pope in the rain, talking to the crowds, is more important than staying dry in the Basilica. So I think in a nutshell, that's Pope Leo's style, and that's what the message is going to be coming out of these Christmas festivities. It's presence over words. Flesh over abstraction, as he himself said, responsibility over blame.
Alina Trabattoni, Merry Christmas, and thank you so much for speaking to me and looking at those beautiful images and all the analysis of the Pope's Mass today. Thank you.